I made some centerpieces yesterday for the Christmas season. It's now early in December and you're thinking, wow, that's too early for a centerpiece, but really it's not. Because if you notice, the centerpiece is all bits of greenery, no floral material. So there are no flowers to expire, and that's what goes first in your floral arrangement. The greenery will last 3, maybe 4 weeks. I'm going to show you another one. Here's a second one I did. It sits on my dining table. I've just used bits of local greenery, euonymus, some alderberry that I'll just point out here, some variegated euonymus, as I mentioned. This is just plain green holly from a neighbor, and you see the red berry material. I've blinged it up a bit with a few things that I've had around. Cost me very little, and I'm going to show you how to put together a centerpiece at low cost, provided you have the greenery accessible to you. Now, as it happens, I live in Nova Scotia, which is on the eastern coast of Canada, and I love to garden as well. What I'm looking at right now is a bush of euonymus. The euonymus is quite variegated, mostly white and green, and snipping off little bits of euonymus are wonderful in a table centerpiece. Bits of holly are also very nice in a table centerpiece. You see, I am lacking berry. I don't have a great deal of berry, but the leaves are very nice, and you can always attach artificial berries for that bit of red. Next to the holly, I have a little bit of a hedge of little sprucey bushes, and you see that the foliage, the needles, are quite blue. So I often will give this bush a haircut about now, and I'll just show you what I do. I'm doing this by myself, so it's hard to photograph myself. But I see this little end, I nip off this little end. Don't want big ends. Don't want anything too large. Gives the bush a bit of a pruning. This is another good end here. Right here. See? That's a nice end here. And I have other things in my yard now I'll show you. My yard is also blessed with some majestic white pine. White pine needles can be very fluffy and great fillers for a table centerpiece. White pine usually have 5 needles to a cluster. I like the white pine because although the trees are enormous, the foliage is quite dainty. I'll show you a few other things I collect throughout the fall for my decorating. These are just dried poppy stems. You see they're gold colored because once they're dried I spray them with a bit of gold paint. These are alderberries that I cut out of the ditch. I spray them with a bit of gold paint. Now, they don't have a great luster, but there is a presence of gold to the tips. And these are pine cones that I picked up for myself. I like the round fat ones, not the ones that grow in my white pine. These I find at the golf course, and nobody minds when I pick up a few pine cones and pop them in my golf bag throughout the season. Save them, dry them. My husband drills a little hole in the bottom, and then I stick a skewer in them, you know, the kind you use to make a shish kebab on the barbecue. Stand them all in a little pan or a pot, take them outside, spray them with a bit of gold paint, and voila, you have bling for your centerpiece, very low cost. Hi, I'm going to show you how to prepare your dish for your arrangement. For this demonstration, I'm going to use this pedestal dish. It's not terribly large, but it's an odd shape. Tricky to get oasis in something this size. I use a bread knife to cut my oasis. I'm going to start by a narrow column of oasis in the center of the dish, like this. Then I'm going to top the dish with another piece of oasis, trimming off the corners with a bread knife, very easily done. I'm going to plunk it on top. It's a little wobbly. I'm going to make a few wedge-shaped pieces to put inside this dish. Perhaps you could take take a better look down here. If I make some wedge-shaped pieces to put in this dish, the oasis holds the water. Plunking in some wedge-shaped pieces here to secure that oasis. It's not very wiggly now. Gonna pop this piece on top. I like my oasis to protrude out of the dish a bit. Gives me something to stick my greenery to. Maybe another wedge-shaped piece could go in here and possibly here. It's a bit of a piecemeal job. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be covered. Take my electrical tape. Using a white dish is not a bad idea. The electrical tape, I adhere to the dish, bring it around, and adhere it to this side of my oasis. Bring it around. The dish doesn't get shown much. If you have your finished arrangement, you probably won't see the tape at all. That's the idea. Now, I'm going to soak this in water. Good and wet. I've already prepared this dish with one block of oasis, and I have taped the oasis with the electrical tape. This time I've taken the tape a little catty corner. I've done that because today I am choosing to use a pillar candle, or pardon me, a tall candle in the middle. It's going to go in here. I don't want it to interfere with the tape. So the tape has gone a little diagonal. Again, nobody ever sees the tape. So I've laid the greenery up on the counter. In this tub is the holly underneath euonymus. In this tub, I have some blue sprucey material. Quite nice. Looks like Christmas tree stuff. And in the sink, I've thrown my white pine because I found the white pine can be a little sappy, and so if I'm going to have pitch on places, I just assume it be in my sink. I start with the foundation of the fir. And you see the little nippy ends I've taken off my hedge. Doesn't hurt to take the little nippy ends off your bushes. As a matter of fact, it thickens your bushes up. When you take the little tippy ends off, if you're careful, your bush tightens up and bushes out more and isn't as spindly. So you're not doing your bushes, your trees, any harm at all. So I'm going to stick this piece into my oasis. But you see it's got little needly bits. Oh, that one just dropped into the sink. Doesn't matter. Take another piece. I cut with my scissors, cut off the little needly bits just so that it'll make a smaller hole in my oasis. Okay? You lay a foundation. As you take your needly bits, I'm going to go in at an angle. 2 bits of fir. Shove them in. I'm going to go around the dish with more needly bits. Some of them are longer than others. I may have to trim them a little shorter. I've got my cutters here for that. This has a little bit of dried leaf material in it. Make sure you take out bits like that. I'm all for natural elements, but we don't need dead vegetation in this thing. Just snipping off the end a little bit. My end that I stick into the oasis for this piece is probably, I don't know, an inch and a half. I'm going to go on this side. I usually do one side and the other side. See? I don't go straight in for this. I'm going to go at the level of the dish edge, slide this piece in. I'm going to take another piece. Doesn't have to be exactly the same size. You want a bit of symmetry, but you don't want it to look too cutesy and exactly one side the same as the other. Another little bit, I trimmed off the little bit of whisker. I'm going to go in on this side. Same height as the dish edge. With a nice dish, you could. Depends on, you know, if you're giving these things, I give them away. I don't sell them, I give them away. So if I'm going to give them away, I'm always thinking of how much I'm going to invest in these things. Nipping off the end here, because your oasis is going to be quite well stuck with all kinds of greenery. And it holds things firmly in place, but you don't need to overwork your oasis by plunking in really, really long stems of everything. Taking off. So I'm going to go all the way around this dish, laying a foundation of fir. So here we are. I've got my dish sort of lined with the fir. It wouldn't have to be fir, but I find it makes a good liner. Already, you can see bits of the edge of the dish, you can still see tape there, are getting more and more concealed. You see now why I put the oasis above the edge of the dish, because it gives me some room. I would say it's above the edge of the dish by about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. Gives me room to plunk greenery in. You want the greenery to go out flat. You don't want it to go up and down. You want it to go out flat and splay from the center of the dish. Now, I find a great filler is pine. So, I've gone out my own white pine. Most people might have access to a wooded area. Oh, wrong thing. So I take a bit of pine here, just a little bit, and it's got a little business off the end. And I might stick them in just randomly right now, just maybe, I won't say in the corners, that one piece went in the corner. And as I said, just looking for a little fine one. You're going for a bit of symmetry. I'm sticking this in near the corner. Right now, the whole idea is to lay a foundation for this thing. Some of my bits of pine, they were really small and fine when I cut them. But now that I'm looking, I feel they're a little coarse, so I'm going to shorten this one up. This has a nice little sprig going off the side. I'm pulling out sometimes these longer whiskery needles. I'll put this one sort of in the corner, not exactly. Here's another nice whiskery full piece. And the stem is fairly woody, and so it sticks into the oasis very nicely. It's slightly above the fir. The fir went in right where the edge of the dish and the oasis intersect. But the pine is up just a little more, a little higher. I'm trying to fill this dish. I could do something else to fill. I've got bits of holly that and you notice my holly is not very well berried, laden with berries. Here's some euonymus that I snipped off. Now sometimes this euonymus can be a little bit grubby. You might want to wash your greenery. I've limed the lawn fairly recently, so there might be remnants of lime. So here I have a sprig of euonymus, and because I trim my euonymus, because I sometimes will shape my euonymus, I have nice tight clusters of branches. Bit of euonymus. I'm just going to plunk this in the end here. See how nicely it kind of fills and hangs? Maybe if you moved a little closer, I'll do another little sprig of euonymus. Okay, here's a little sprig of euonymus. Give it a little rinse. If you don't wash everything off, perhaps I should, because it's going on a table. Okay, so here we have a little sprig of euonymus. I'm going to put it sort of fairly much in the middle of this side piece. Push it in right to the greenery, meets the edge of the foam. You do not want any oasis to show once we're all done. Another little sprig here. Okay, pop that in here. This is sort of guess by gosh. There is no exact, precise way, well, the florist, a real florist might argue. I don't use a tremendous amount of precision. Yeah, it's a little wash. I'm just going to pop it in here. You see how little by little, bit by bit, I'm filling in. From a sidelong view, you don't really see that much oasis. Looking down from the top, you still see plenty of oasis. Still lots of work to do. So maybe I'll take a sprig of holly now. My holly's quite woody. I'm going to cut off so that I have about an inch of holly. And I'm just popping it in here somewhere on the side. Another little, okay, here's another little bit of holly here. I'm going to take off the bottom leaves. Holly makes a really good filler. So I've got like 4 little branches there. Nip it off a bit. Take off the balls and anything that's growing on the stem. You want a nice straight stem. And maybe plunk it in here. Now in flower arranging, when you get beyond the filler and you're starting to pop things in, it's good to have things in groups of 3, groups of 5, odd numbers. So right now I'm going to start with 3 groups of holly popped in. There's no berry on that holly. So there we are. Maybe a little more pine. I'm just going to pick away at this for a bit now and do a little more filler. So I'm adding a few more sprigs of pine, filling this in more and more all the time, starting at the outside edges, working in little bits of pine, and I, bit by bit, little by little, I'm entering more and more material into my flower arrangement. The pine is one of my favorite things, in that it is just so, it's graceful, it splays, it covers and conceals the oasis bit by bit. Now, I've chosen for this arrangement to use this tall candle. You could adhere the candle right into the oasis, but it gets a little floppy, and that can be tricky. And remember, this is organic material, and you do water this thing, but if you didn't, and you let it go dry, it could be a bit of a fire hazard. So it's good to have your candle either, if you could come a little closer please, either up high, and sometimes people have these things, they don't even burn the candle. So you plunk this thing in the middle, push it down good and hard. So the flame will be up fairly high when the candle is new, and people then can easily change the candle by removing and replacing the candle partway through the holiday season if they've burned this one down too low. Another thing I'm going to put in this arrangement is a wine bottle stopper, and that'll be a little gift, a little present to the person receiving this arrangement. So they get the dish, they get the wine bottle stopper. Sometimes my friends will return the dishes to me in the bit of bling because they know that I redo these arrangements year after year and they hope to receive a new one. So I have bits of fur here that sometimes I will use now every once in a while and intersperse. I want smaller pieces now of fur to just intersperse a little bit, a presence of fur. I've used it on the edge, but actually that's quite a generous piece. If I thought it was too much, I'd just rip off this long wing, just give it a haircut, and maybe just a little bit of fur at the top. Just a little presence of fur. And if I had another little tiny one, here's a nice little one. So I've got the candle popped in, and now I'm working on filling in the top of this thing. Again, here's a cluster of fir here. It would be nice to have a third little cluster of fir, just something small would be good. This one here is tiny. Give them a little bit of trim, take off a bit of material here, the needle material. So I'm going to pop this in here. Now, you still see a lot of the oasis, which is you know, something we need to remedy. A little bit of anonymous, just trying to cover up most of the oasis now by putting in a variety of materials. Here's some holly. We don't want huge pieces of anything. You don't want anything that's going to interfere in the flame of the candle, because that could be a hazard. Some of these pieces are quite large, but not to worry. I will save them for another arrangement. I'm going to make a second one today. So we'll trim off a bit of this holly and stick it in here and there. And it's also good, if you notice, when I'm doing my trimming, I've got a cut edge of holly here. I don't use that on the top. You don't really want the cut edges to show. You show the leaf end, the finished end of the piece. Oh, that's not quite enough stem. Pop that in here. Now you still see some oasis. I still have a little bit of work to do. And the very best filler of all are little bits of pine. A little bit of pine here. Give them a little bit of a haircut. Thrust that one in there. And if I had one more sprig of holly, of pine, I might be sort of done with the greenery. That's a little bit of a wet bit. Doesn't matter, it'll dry out. I'm going to pop this in here. Now, you might argue, hey, that's not done. I can still see oasis, and indeed you can. We are not finished. We're just kind of working our way in that direction. I think now might not be a bad time to stick in my snowman. So I usually put him in at an angle off center. Most things go at an angle toward the center, toward the candle. So you see I've put him at an angle. And I didn't use any wire. It had a nice little point on it, as does this one. But I put it in at an angle, not straight up and down. I don't even know where I got these, but they came taped and everything. Actually, a whole bag of these balls, red balls, a little bit of bling, and they almost look a little cheesy. But you know what? Tossed in these centerpieces, they look quite spectacular. So I have 3 of them. Actually, when I bought them, they had like pink plastic holly leaves coming off, and I thought, oh dear. So I thought, we need to nip those off, and I did. So I just want a little presence of bling in 3 different spots, and I don't have them at the top of my centerpiece. I'm sort of putting them in the side. Can you sort of see what I've done here? You see the little bit of red coming through, but you don't see a lot of red coming through. I have chosen, most of my centerpieces are done in gold and red and green. I've done the odd blue one, but not many. And so today I have chosen some green ribbon. This ribbon is sheer. I prefer sheer or a netted. This is another example, a netted ribbon. I would tell you that it's about 1.5 inches wide. It might be 2 inches wide. But I like things that are good on both sides. I prefer sheer ribbon. It's daintier. I cut the end of it on a diagonal. I'm not even sure how long a piece I need. And I'm going to need a bit of my floral wire. And here it is. I'm going to need a bit of my floral wire. So I'm going to cut off a piece of wire that's, I don't know, 6 inches long at the most. So my ribbon for this is going to be quite dainty. And you notice the ribbon has a bit of a gold edge. The gold edge is, I'm going to pop a bit of gold in here as well to give me, in the end, red, green, and gold. So I take my bit of ribbon. There's numerous ways you can do this, but I'm going to make a bow. Have a bit of tail, because the tail can wind in here nicely, and we can always trim it off if it's too long. So I make a loop, a loop, a loop, and a loop. Sometimes I make my bows with 4 loops, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes I make my bows with 6 loops. But I think with something as dainty as a centerpiece, 4 loops is probably adequate. So I make sure my tail is about the same length, and I cut the ribbon at a diagonal. The reason we cut it at a diagonal is because the ribbon is less likely to fray. Now I take the middle of the ribbon, I'll do this again, and squeeze it, squeeze. You see what I've done? I've got 2 loops here, a tail, 2 loops. Take my bit of ribbon, pardon me, wire, and I wrap it, twist tight as I can. Okay, pop up my bits of loop. I just hold it in here, make sure that it looks fine, that the loops aren't too big. Okay, I think that'll work. So here's my bow, already fastened with the wire. How am I going to get my bow into my arrangement? Too easy. Take a skewer, cut a piece off. I don't know, 3 inches. It's too long. You can always trim it later. Here's my wire. Here's my bow. Wrap your wire a little bit around the skewer, sort of like this. As a start, this is not going to hold it all together. Okay? And that you think, that's not going to hold anything, and you're right, it's not. So then you take some of this floral tape. Floral tape you can get at a fabric store, you can get it at a craft shop, flower shop. Not that expensive, lasts for years and years. And you're thinking, well, this stuff isn't even sticky. And it isn't really. But as you pull it, it adheres to itself. So I'm wrapping my stick and the wire together. I always like to entirely cover the stick if I can. Now this is a little awkward to film. It's a little awkward to do. This is a great way to adhere anything that's got a wobbly stem into, if you were using a flower with a wobbly stem, anything with a wobbly stem that doesn't have a nice woody stem like all the greenery we've been using, you do this. And you just wrap the stem with the, see, it's green. You covered the wood. So the wood's not going to show. The green's going to sort of just be absorbed into the oasis. Now, so I've got my snowman here. If you could come a little forward. If I've got my snowman here, I don't want my bow exactly across from the snowman, but I sure don't want it to get in the way of the snowman. So perhaps here. Stick it down, make it look like it was tied to maybe some of the greenery. Take the tails of the ribbon and run them through. Fluff up your loops of your bow to look kind of. Don't let the wire show, don't let the stick show, don't let anything show. We're coming along nicely now. It's looking pretty good. I have bits of pine cone. Sprayed gold. Wouldn't have to be sprayed gold. You could leave them natural, but I like them sprayed gold. Also on those skewers, if you drill the hole in the bottom of the cone and the skewer's a little floppy, pop in a bit of craft glue before you run in the skewer. These are plenty long, but I can nip them shorter. I also have some other bling. Dollar store, you usually buy this stuff in a long spray. And you nip off the ends. And you're thinking, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to fit that in the oasis. And you're probably not by itself. So I take a skewer, cut off bits, maybe 3 inches long. Now, I'm going to demonstrate doing one. Okay. Here's my stick. Here's my bit of bling. Wrapping it onto the stick. Gives it a more secure stem. Around and around we go. I'm going to do that to all 3. So this is the original spray of bling that I bought at the dollar store. Okay. I nip off each one of these little ferny things because that's just too much for a table centerpiece. I only want a pop of bling. So here I have my 3 bits of bling, and again, I don't put them in a very prominent spot. I tuck them in under. And I don't, no, I've got 3 clusters of red balls. I don't want it to be too symmetrical. I don't want to have, you know, a gold business and then a red business and then a gold business. I don't want it to look that planned. I might put this one up a little higher. But I do try to spread them out so that they are sort of at thirds. Just pop them in anywhere. And now I think it's time to insert the cones. The cones have a bit of a long stem on them. Now the cones, I'm examining my piece now because the cones are pretty, but they serve a purpose. If I see any oasis showing or an area that looks plain and doesn't have much adornment, because this thing is seen from all sides, I pop in a cone. These are very cheap for me, very inexpensive, because I think I told you already how I get them from the golf course. This one is a fairly chunky one, quite fat. So I can see a bit of oasis here next to my snowman, so I'm going to pop in a comb. That bit hanging down too far. I'm going to cut that down. There's nothing saying you can't give the thing a bit of a haircut. I'm going to stick another little cone here. Now, I count my cones. 1, 2, oh dear, 1, 2, 3, I think I've got 4 in here. Yeah, good idea to have a 5th one. Just going to pull the squatty one out of my bucket. The stem's way too long. It's hard to know when you're done. And I'm sitting looking at this. Turn. That might be a bit bare there. Let me pop this one in here. Sort of coming down from the top. This general area. Don't want it to overpower my snowman. And it's difficult with my countertop being so untidy. I'm going to move it to the table. To see it from a fresh perspective, and I'll get this other one out of the way. Hard to know when you're done. I more bling in there. I have other little things I could insert. Sometimes I put little jingly bells and tie them onto the ends of my greenery. Sometimes I have little packages on a stick that I can insert, like this. Yeah, that's kind of cute. Do I have 3? Yes, I do. Okay. So I bought a package of these little packages. These were Walmart. I've cut the strings off them. I've taken a skewer and I've cut it in thirds. And these are only like little styrofoam doodads wrapped in something glittery. Helps kind of keep the So just to keep the theme of the green, I bought these little packages in. One package on a stick and maybe a third one here. I think I'm done. I think that my niece will be very happy with this. I think that makes a lovely centerpiece. Took about an hour. Inexpensive. You might want to try this yourself. I'm Muriel West, wishing you a very Merry Christmas.